Esther, great to talk to you. I've loved your work over the years on other Sky News programs. Great to have you on the Kenny Report. Give us your thoughts on Donald Trump and Greenland and the challenge that presents for NATO countries.
Yeah, so you've been seeing, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. You've been seeing European leaders doing what they do best, which is clutching their pearls and scrapping together and having
Yes.
meetings that get them nowhere and that ends up doing nothing. They're very good at talking the talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, that doesn't really tend to materialize. Trump's issue with Greenland is the protection or the security of the Arctic Circle. Now, I think one of the things that it's important to note is not just what he says, but what actually happens when he says the things that he says. So Trump has made a point that Greenland is needed to secure America's national security interests because of the increasing buildup of military forces by the Russians and the Chinese. And I think the point he's making isn't just the fact that the Europeans' kind of lax approach to their own security has resulted from their kind of adherence to international law and rules-based order, which is not worth the money it's printed on. But now it's putting their ally, the Americans, at risk. And you have to remember that being an ally is a relationship. Both parties have to be getting something from it. And I think the point that Trump is making is, for many decades now, the Europeans have basically coasted off of American security guarantees. And it's no longer a relationship that's actually benefiting the US on the security front. I mean, just to contextualize this, since Donald Trump has made noise again about trying to buy Greenland, the Europeans together combined, from the Danish to the French to the Brits, have sent 37 soldiers to Denmark, to Greenland, to defend it from the Americans. I mean, that is just encapsulating how pathetic this action is, to defend a territory of 57,000 people.
It says it all. In many ways, it underlines Donald Trump's effectiveness. They realise that they really should put some military assets into this piece of territory, but then it's just so pathetic because it's such a desultory number. We'll keep tabs on that. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens when the president turns up at Davos and they have some of these discussions in public. At the same time, though, I noticed that the UK has actually given up some land to Mauritius, some islands to Mauritius. Why would the UK be handing over land when Donald Trump is showing how it might be better to hang on to strategic assets?
But because the UK is led and has been led for many decades by weak men who think that the best way to keep the UK and the good graces of many countries around the world that don't actually wish the UK well is to just basically to kowtow to everything that they ask for. So they've given up the Chagos Islands. We're the first country, I think, in history to pay another country to keep territory that is ours, which is an astonishing feat. But Trump's gripe with this is the Diego Garcia bases, which is a military base that has significant American presence. Now, at the time that this deal was signed, which is monumentally stupid, as Donald Trump said, Keir Starmer said that the Americans will still be able to have access to these bases and just lease it off the Mauritians. But Trump's problem is that Mauritius is quite friendly with the Chinese. And this whole thing came about because of basically Russian and Chinese lawfare, because they know that Keir Starmer, as a human rights lawyer, is more interested in ink on paper than actual hard realities of politicking, which is that international law doesn't keep you safe, militaries do. And that you actually have to work in your country's interests and military strategic interests instead of just adhering to international law. International law didn't help the Ukrainians when they got invaded by Russia, and it's not going to help Brits when they give up their own national security interests because they're scared of falling foul of this delusion that the Europeans and Brits have decided to indulge in and risk all of our security interests.
Indeed, international law is in so many cases is a fiction. I want to go to another issue that relates to transgender issues. Probably some good news here. It unfolded in the National Health Service. Here's an explainer.
These 7 nurses went into battle with their employer, taking their NHS trust to court for allowing a transgender colleague to use a female changing room. Their complaints centred on Rose Henderson, an operating department practitioner who identifies as a woman and was allowed to use the female changing rooms at Darlington Memorial Hospital under the Trust's transitioning in the workplace policy.
And Esther, there's been an outcome here, an outbreak of common sense, biological man banned from the women's toilets?
Yeah, so the tribunal that found in the favor of these nurses, I think the wording was even more spectacular. It said it violated the dignity of the nurses by expecting them to share a changing room with a biological man, which I think encapsulates this whole thing seriously. I mean, the only reason why we're seeing common sense on these issues is because courts have stepped in. We know that the Supreme Court in the UK ruled that biological sex is actually the only basis for the definition of gender. Now, we know in the US, the Supreme Court is also entertaining the idea of whether states like Idaho and West Virginia can uphold their bans on men in women's sports. So with all of these cases, it always has to be the courts that step in to say, actually, we're going to affirm biological reality and not force women to share intimate spaces with biological men, regardless of how they identify. And thankfully, I think this is going to keep going, and it's a trend that we're going to keep seeing in the West, because honestly, enough is enough. This has become ridiculous. This idea that the women have to shut up and put up with it because it hurts the feelings of men is ridiculous.
Let's protect the rights of women and girls. Thanks so much for joining us, Esther. I appreciate it. Esther Krakue there, live from London. She'll be a regular for us on the program.